So, dream matches. We always think about them. Sometimes at night we'll quite literally dream about them. But here's some you're never going to get, so you may as well get over it. Now, these ones that mean a lot to me, which is why number 10 is CM Punk versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, because it mostly goes back to 2013 or 2012. Obviously, WWE 13, right? CM Punk was on the cover. I was working as a PR for WWE at that point at THQ. Then THQ died and I lost my job. But that's the reason I took the job, because I wanted to deal with WWE in that sense. And I did have a media day with CM Punk when I was like his guide to make sure he had everything he needed and set up all the interviews, so that was cool. But of course, soon after this, the Steve Austin, Jim Ross, CM Punk sit-down came out, and they did such a good job. It was like, are these two actually going to feud? And they were doing stuff on TV. Do you remember when CM Punk approached Steve Austin when he was the general manager? I can't remember it. The punchline was something like, Steve Austin said to CM Punk, I can whip your ass backwards, because CM Punk thought he was drunk. So we had all of these little hints. I think we all bought into it. And even when they were doing those interactions, it just hit you like a ton of bricks. Oh my gosh, they're the perfect foil to one another. Obviously, Steve Austin, like the redneck, beer-swilling, whatever you want to call him, robot dude, or he was the robotic redneck. And you had CM Punk, straight edge, and obviously someone that would look down on Steve Austin. But they just had chemistry. And I suppose you never say never, like Steve Austin can be active should he so choose, but I can't see it happening. And I think if Steve Austin did have another match, well, no, actually, it probably could be against CM Punk, because I think they would both advocate for it. I mean, CM Punk was probably super active in WWE from 2006 onwards, and Austin was long retired ever since then. But it would have been awesome. And what I've tried to do with these lists is have two people that existed within the ether. So I'm not saying Andre the Giant versus The Big Show, because it never would have happened. It's quite literally impossible. But Steve Austin was able to come back, obviously, at WrestleMania 39. And there was plenty of talk on the internet during that period that he could have wrestled if he wanted to, even after he walked away at WrestleMania 19. There was so much chatter that he may have gone to, who the hell was it? It was a Japanese promotion, Hustle, I think. They booked Goldberg a lot, and they apparently were going to book Stone Cold Steve Austin, but they never did. You'd have to imagine that if conversations had got super duper serious, maybe this could have happened, especially after that sit-down promo. If you haven't seen it, it's still on YouTube. It's very similar to the WrestleMania 17 one between The Rock and Steve Austin. It will make you believe, and you're like, oh yeah, it's Steve Austin. He's quite literally the best of all time. Now, number 9 is a little bit different, but it ties into what WWE did. Because when DDP debuted in the WWE after WCW died in 2001 or 2002, whenever the hell it was one of the most disappointing things that's ever happened in wrestling history. We had him as the stalker. All you need to do is go and watch when Diamond Dallas Page takes off his balaclava in the middle of the Raw ring and listen to that reaction. People are so damn excited because it felt like the invasion angle being done properly, and then he tried to stalk the Undertaker and his wife and got absolutely obliterated over and over and over again at pay-per-view after pay-per-view. This was so stupid, because do you know who else was in the company at this time? The Rock. Do you know what The Rock called himself? The People's Champion. Do you know who was calling themselves the People's Champion for The Rock on WCW? It was DDP. And do you know two people that would make it over like Rover? DDP and The Rock. That was the thing to do. You wouldn't have even had to turn either of them bad guy. You wouldn't have done. Just throw them out there into the ring, much like we kind of did with Hogan versus Rock, but of course Hogan was meant to be the heel. That didn't work out. And just let the audience have chosen. If The Rock had come out after DDP had done the whole whoop, off comes my balaclava, I tell you, the electricity, I do mean that as a pun, would have been off the charts. You have the built-in story. I know it sounds dumb, but wrestling things like this always work. You took my catchphrase, no I didn't. And listen, it was true to form. The Rock was the People's Champion after a while in WWE. DDP was absolutely the People's Champion in WCW. You can say we want he's friends with Eric Bischoff. Well, maybe that's how he got his opportunity, but man, he took every single one of those opportunities and he made it work. He was so good. When he won the World Championship, once again, go and listen to the crowd. They loved DDP because he was so flippin' inspiring, much as he is today. So I just think it's nuts we never did it. That would have been way better than all the invasion angle stuff we got too. This was dropping the ball, and it was just not giving the people what they wanted. It sounds like a weird one, The Rock versus DDP. But you go back to that period, and it would have worked even more so because of the WCW versus WWE madness, right? And he was in the company as well. So you can start picking other people. Well, why didn't we do Hulk Hogan and The Rock then? Hogan wasn't coming for another year. DDP had given up his AOL Time Warner contract because he wanted to be on television. He wanted to get another shot. This was dumb, man, and I would die on that hill. Number 8 is a horrible one as well, because it's Shawn Michaels versus Eddie Guerrero. And even when I was making this list, I was like, well, of course they fought, but they didn't. They had a few skirmishes here and there, but never had a proper one-on-one. And I don't know whether it's rumors in hindsight or whatever, but everybody said it was meant to be the WrestleMania after the year that Eddie Guerrero passed. Now, obviously, nothing's more important than that. Wrestling is the most important of the least important things. But I genuinely think, given where Eddie Guerrero was in his career and the levels he was doing, and of course, Shawn Michaels Part 2 is absolutely ridiculous, it probably would have been one of the best matches of all time. You go back to Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle, and you'd imagine it would have had a similar feel to that. And the thing that really kicks you, and again, nothing is worse than the passing of Eddie Guerrero, but they weren't existing at the same time, and they had such similar stories. Like, Shawn Michaels had to sort of semi-retire because of his back injuries and other personal problems. Eddie Guerrero had gone through it too, and they both come out on the other side and were producing their best work, arguably. So to never get it when it could have been just an absolute barn burner, especially because they were in the same company at the same time, I suppose it's the thing I always try and remember. Of course, I never want anything like this again, but it's why sometimes we should just strike when the iron is hot. And if it doesn't make the most sense in terms of what you're doing or the stories that are on the screen, you don't want these matches to pass you by when two guys can go out there and really tell you we're some of the best of all time. Again, it felt so obvious that it had been done, but it hadn't. And it truly, truly sucks. Now, number 7 also kind of counts, but not really. Like, Bryan Danielson obviously was in the early part of his career, but he was sort of active, I'm pushing it a little bit, when Kurt Angle was doing his thing. Now, obviously, they did get to have that little sequence in the greatest Royal Rumble ever, whatever the flub it was called. But if we were just able to wave a magic wand and done this a few years previous, before Kurt Angle sort of, well, look, he gave too much to wrestling, or I'm sure he sees it as he gave enough, whatever. One of the best to ever do it. Arguably the best bell-to-bell guy in history. I certainly wouldn't argue with you. And Bryan Danielson is in that conversation as well. So the fact there was a period when they were both in WWE, or if Kurt Angle had sort of jumped back a few years before that, as was the rumor, they would have been in the same company together. Maybe TNA could have signed Bryan Danielson. I don't know. It's not like people didn't know about the American Dragon. I remember reading about him in the pages of Power Slam. That was when I was but a fetus and I was like, man, who is this dude? I better check him out. And it's another one. Do you know how good this would have been? It would have been a technical masterclass, because you could probably argue there is no Bryan Danielson without Kurt Angle. I'm sure he was crazy inspired by him, and we never flipping got it. I would throw Kenny Omega in there as well, but I haven't done that, I don't think, so I'll shut up now, because no, I haven't done that. But we can only dream, and we can imagine. And again, it's not like, I'm trying to think of somebody from way back when, Ricky Steamboat versus Bryan Danielson, although actually Ricky Steamboat did go a long time, but he was from that generation plus generation before that, whereas Kurt was still doing his thing when Bryan Danielson started breaking in. And of course, it wouldn't be the Bryan Danielson we know today, who also has become one of the GOATs, one of the all-timers. But you just know it was always in there. And it was always in there with Kurt Angle, hence why he was able to become the WWE champion like 1 year after debuting, which is totally crazy. I don't want to say we should have got it, because we didn't, but it just feels like we were so flipping close. Number 6, we go back to Steve Austin, and this is tied into an episode of his Steve Austin show he did on the WWE Network. You remember it when Paul Heyman was his guest, and he did it again. This is the problem with Austin. It's a good thing. But if you hit his Stone Cold button and he turns it on, he will make you believe that match is happening tomorrow, because he's too good at cutting a promo. And yeah, Paul Heyman was talking about Brock Lesnar, and then Steve Austin started acting like he didn't like what he was saying. And then everyone was like, at the end of that interview, was like, well, we're doing Brock versus Steve Austin at WrestleMania. And we weren't. And Vince McMahon was so mad, he told them, you have to go out and announce we're not doing this, because we can't give that to the fans. And I don't want to tease something that I can't sell. But within that moment, you realize, obviously, Brock Lesnar is way bigger than Steve Austin. But the way Steve Austin acted here, everybody would have got money on Steve Austin. That's what he was able to do. He was larger than life. He was able to turn himself up to 42 whenever the hell he wanted. And I don't even know how this match would have gone, especially at the time, because I can't imagine Steve Austin's able to take German suplex after German suplex. But you just know it would have clicked, and you just know it would have figured it out. So this is not even a match I knew I needed before that interview. But again, my nerddom kicked in, and I was convinced. It was probably like 2016, maybe 2015. But I walked away going, well, I can't wait for that match, and we never got it. So it was like a dream match I didn't know it was a dream match. Then it became a dream match, and then it was taken away from me. So when you break up with your partner, instantly you're like, I should have done that, and I want them back. Number 5 is a technicality. Don't get mad at me, because I know that Cody Rhodes and Triple H have fought before. And talking about pre-AEW Cody Rhodes versus Triple H, I'm talking about post. Now, obviously, Triple H never wrestling again is actually the best thing ever. The man had a heart scare. He almost died. I don't want him to get in the ring if it's a question of life and death. Who the flub cares? Nobody should say that. If you do say things like that, you're crazy and you need to go look in the mirror. However, they were both still doing this stuff at one point. And when Cody Rhodes broke the throne, which in hindsight was a little bit silly, but who cares, man? Do dumb stuff in wrestling. It's also the best. If the timelines had been different somehow, or maybe Cody had come back before he did, or that wouldn't have worked because he timed it perfectly, you could have had that sort of almost WCW, WWE effect when it's a WWE guy going against the AEW guy who also used to be a WWE guy, and Cody could have blamed it on Triple H. It was, oh, you held me down. Whatever the flub you want to do, which is kind of the stuff he was insinuating in All Elite Wrestling anyway. And now they're the best of friends, man, we could have swum in this forever. Remember when Triple H and CM Punk were doing the promos? They called each other Paul and Phil. Go and watch them today. If you can suspend your disbelief in them, like, man, these guys really hate each other, because they did. Now, I don't think Cody and Triple H ever hated each other, but I think they're such good professionals. I think they understand the business so much, they would have figured out a way to really made you buy in. And I was just pondering on this the other day, and the conversation for a good year, when WWE was doing the NXT stuff and AEW obviously was being led by Cody Rhodes, among others, it just would have been the best. And I didn't really actually think about it until I sat down and made this, because I wanted to include some AEW guys in there. I was like, that would be the one. Especially because Cody Rhodes did jump back. By that point, Triple H had retired. And again, thank goodness he did. When did he leave his boots in the ring? Was that the night that Cody came back or the night after? I think it was the same sort of period at least. Or was it the year after? The point is, it was within 12 months. And that... It's just so damn close. Again, he made the right choice, never come back. He's one of my favorite guys, but we don't need that. But I really do think, well, it would have made tribalism worse, but you almost could have made it like an NWO thing when Cody leans into all the AEW stuff, and so does Triple H. I mean, it would have pissed a lot of people off too, but there is something entertaining in that as well. Number 4, go back to Kurt Angle, because again, don't forget, he walked in 1999 when Ken Shamrock was most definitely still around. My gosh, would I have loved this. Now, this one is very much looking back in time. I kind of got into MMA probably a few years after this, mostly when UFC blew up. I'm not going to pretend I was an early advocate of it. I found it when all of a sudden people were talking about it. But when you had Kurt Angle, who obviously could have gone to MMA. He probably would have gone to MMA these days, given the money and the notoriety it has. But Ken Shamrock, who was sort of one of these early pioneers of everything the Ultimate Fighting Championship did, why the flub did WWE not do this match? Even if you thought Kurt Angle was too early in, you could have put him with Ken. Ken Shamrock could have shown him a thing or two. And if you did it where Kurt Angle wasn't the star he'd go on to become, but Ken Shamrock at that point was still Ken Shamrock. I can't remember when he left the WWE. Just ask him back. Hi, Ken. Can you come back with one match with Kurt Angle? I just think that would have been amazing. And I think the reason it ranks so highly, I think they would have done a style that's very similar to today. And now we could have used that match to go, oh my gosh, did you see how many people it inspired? And it just would have been bonkers. Maybe WWE didn't do it because they were too worried that it would be too MMA heavy, even though, of course, Kurt Angle came from an Olympic wrestling background. But I think I just love Ken Shamrock. And I think when we sit down to talk about old dudes, we don't talk about Ken Shamrock enough, especially everything he did in TNA. He was the first ever TNA World Champion. But it's a shame, is what I've decided. And Kurt Angle's never been bad. I mean, obviously he got better as the years went on. But even on day one, he was absolutely brilliant. So I think this would have ruled. And once again, here's my catchphrase, we never flipping got it. Number 3, we stick with Kurt Angle, because this is kind of true too. Again, let's use 1999 as the year when Kurt Angle all of a sudden started to turn heads. Bret Hart was in WCW. Now, I understand the concussion was around this time as well, but it just means they were still technically active at the same time. And that, again, was my MO for this. Who could have not realistically crossed paths, but it could have happened. It's not like it's totally impossible. And there was a crossover there, which doesn't make any sense, right? Because I think our brains situate them in different periods, but they didn't. And that's another one. I should have put Bret Hart versus Bryan Danielson on here, but I think that's one step too removed. I think you would have struggled to actually justify that. But they just would have given you... Because I think Bret Hart's big thing is he loved working with new people. That's why he was so into The Rock. That's why he was so into Steve Austin. Because they allowed him to sort of tap into his creative wrestling brain. And Kurt Angle was such... Well, he was next level when it came to sort of technical wrestling or skilled wrestling, whatever you want to call it, mat-based wrestling. I think Bret Hart would have had a field day with that. And even if it was a Kurt Angle from 1999, I think, once again, I'm repeating myself, you would have got one of those matches that lasted a long old time. And some people today probably still would have cited it as one of the best matches they had ever seen. And it probably also would have tied into what we deem modern wrestling to be in 2025. Because so many people go back to Kurt Angle, they go back to Bret Hart. I think both have said it would have been their dream match as well. Listen, huge Bret Hart guy. He's my number one, usually 1A and 1B with Steve Austin. And I just said it, Kurt Angle, as far as I'm concerned, is probably the best bell-to-bell guy ever. You'd really have to sit down and think about that, but I would throw him in there. If we were doing a round table and there's 5 people and no one had said it, I'd be like, excuse me, guys, we have not mentioned Kurt Angle. So it could have happened. It wasn't for WCW and WF being a bunch of idiots. But they were. So now, once again, especially now, it ain't ever happening. Number 2 is boring as well, but Sting versus The Undertaker. I mean, how did you not do this? Sting was there. Undertaker was still going. I don't care if the streak was broken. The streak wasn't broken. You didn't have to do it at WrestleMania. Oh, it's to be at WrestleMania. No, it doesn't. You could have done it at Bad Blood for I would have cared. Just would have been so obvious. You have Sting really lean into his Crow character. Obviously, Undertaker is spooky wooky too. Instead, we made Sting a part of the NWO. Oh, talk about it, man. That was absolutely stupid. It just was. You just should have done it. Just give the fans what they want. I don't care if the Undertaker and Sting aren't into it, though I'm sure they would have been. They ain't in charge. book them. Write their name down on a piece of paper. Do it on an episode of Monday Night Raw. At the time, people would have been mad, but it was way better than not getting it. Just don't understand it. I get that Sting didn't come in during the invasion angle, but you got him in 2015 or wherever the flub it was. The Undertaker was not retired. He was not the Undertaker he used to be, so maybe the match wouldn't have been of the quality that we would have expected, but I don't always need good match quality. Sometimes I need a badass entrance from the Undertaker, I need a badass entrance from Sting, and then I just want to see them look at each other, and then they can just do holds or punch each other in the face, or it can be 3 minutes. I don't want to get to this stage where unless they put on a 5-star classic, we deem it unworthy. No, sometimes it is about the pageantry. Sometimes it is about the showmanship. I would argue, apart from number one, which is why it's number two, but in terms of two people that were looking at each other from WCW to WWE and vice versa, they were parallel, man. Like, who did I have on this list? The Rock versus DDP. You didn't have to do that. Nobody would have cared. Hulk Hogan versus The Rock. I get it, but you didn't have to do it. It's not like they were looking at each other. It was more like Hulk Hogan and Steve Austin. But the Undertaker was Sting, and Sting was the Undertaker. How did we never get it when they were still active at the same time? I'm banging my hand on the desk, which I shouldn't do, but that is baloney. As is number one. I talked about that Hustle show. I realized they wanted to book Austin versus Goldberg. That's right. Steve Austin versus Bill Goldberg. Bill Goldberg debuted in the WWE the night after Steve Austin retired. Just stupid that is. Repeating myself for the 47th time. Why didn't we just say, hey, Bill, I know you're earning $1 billion. Listen. No matter what WWE would have paid Bill Goldberg, I understand it would upset the locker room. They're like, well, this isn't fair. Why is he being paid more than everybody? I am not going to worry about finances. But no matter what money you would have paid Bill Goldberg, if you had done Steve Austin versus Bill Goldberg in 2002 or 2001, you would have made that money back and more on pay-per-view. On anything else you could have done, they could have done a 3-match program. They could have stared at each other for 47 minutes and people still would have gone, that's the best thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Why didn't we do this? Well, I understand why he didn't do it. I just talked about it right there and then. But Goldberg to come in the night after Austin is gone, it just kills me. Goldberg's still going now. Austin technically still going. Now it's too late. You're never going to be able to do what it was. This is another one. It's Sting Taker Part 2, arguably Part 1 and Sting Taker is Part 2. Just figure it out and throw money at things. It wouldn't have affected anything now. We could have looked back and there's no way it would have been bad. They were buddies as well. I'm pretty sure there was no animosity like there was between Goldberg and Triple H, which caused that feud to be such a mess. I think they would have got on the same page. There may have been a sticking point in terms of winners or losers. I think Goldberg probably would have just had to suck it up given that he was moving to WWE. But now we wouldn't have been talking about, I can't believe Bill Goldberg lost. We would just be talking about everything I just leaned into there. The entrances, the spectacle, and fans probably going absolutely insane. WrestleMania 18 should have been Steve Austin versus Goldberg and The Rock versus Hulk Hogan. I will die on that hill. It was absolutely insane that we didn't, given that wrestling is predetermined, and I will be mad about it forever because I am a geek. But none of this matters. I've got my piece out now. I need you to do the same in the comments below. Let me know the dream matches you wanted. Don't tie into generic internet stuff. It could be Repo Man versus Doink the Clown. I respect you. Also could have been a crossover. Should have put it in this list. Pretty sure they fought once. Doesn't matter. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Click the notification bell. Click the video on the screen to get more of my dumb content. Otherwise, grillermind.com/Simon. Please go check them out. Use the code Simon, get 10% off. I promise you these supplements are good. TikTok is Simon J. Miller. Cameo is Simon Miller. Super cheap TikToks. I love doing them. Come get a cameo video. Simon316 on all social media. I just said that. Pro Wrestling Tees. Simon.bigcartel.com for merchandise. That's it. Now let's move on. Doesn't matter. Wrestling is there to entertain us, and I'll see you tomorrow.